I think we got a Land Rover, my friends. Welcome back to the Tea Party Rover. We're gonna do a cage today, but first thing I need to do is put this together. I got a new 20-ton shop press from Harbor Freight. It's a little more compact. I like this style a little better. All right. One of the things I really like, even with a bigger shop than I've ever had, is having things on rollers. That way I can move them around. So I did actually go ahead and grab some rollers from Harbor Freight as well that I can put on here. That way I have some nice rolling casters at the bottom of this press if I need to move it out of my way. So while I tack these on, Shanna's gonna go ahead and start bolting this top piece onto here. Yeah?
Yep, I got it.
Got these welded in. I have casters on the front that can rotate, and then the rears are just solid. That way it's not too hard to move around. Now, because I have this on wheels, it's not sitting obviously exactly flat on the ground, so it doesn't want to sit perfectly square. That way I can just go ahead and bring this over just a little bit, square it up, and then we can tighten it down. There we go. I'll tighten these up a little bit so it gets a little more tension going to that. And we have our rolling press. Much better, much lighter.
He needed a new one. That one's really, really old.
All right, now one of the things that I upgraded on my press, if you remember the old Harbor Freight presses like the one I have, the one that was like orangish yellow, it had cast arbor plates. When those explode, things get scary. Now they've changed up. They have steel ones here now that are actually plasma cut. I went ahead and stepped up to these swag ones. They're quite a bit thicker, quite a bit larger, and they'll work better for me because I press all kinds of crazy stuff on. At least it's still a 20-ton press. I still have this one, so I can put these here. You can see how much smaller those are. And I can now park this thing out in my storage unit. So if I have some like crazy thing that I'm scared of, I can bring it out to it and put it out there and go to town, put a bunch of blankets over it. I also want to hang these. If you guys have seen these on top of my press, these are also from Swag. These are dimple dies. The thing about dimple dies is you don't want to overdo stuff. So you do them like for highlighted things, which like I did on my bumpers and stuff. So I'm going to take all these and make a mount for them as well. One of the other issues I've had with all of these presses, it doesn't matter who makes it, there is nowhere to hold a jack handle. And so that's why I went ahead and made this. I notched out the bottom so it won't hold any grime if something gets in there. But that way I can weld it right here on the side. This is as high as this press plate gets, so I can weld it way down here and keep it out of the way. And for the dimple dies, I used 3/8 cold roll and then 1/2 inch cold roll that I got from Tractor Supply. So I'm gonna go ahead and weld those on the sides, and that way I can have all of my dimple dies hung up on the side where I don't have to worry about finding them. All right, perfect. And just like that, we now have a mobile press that can handle a lot more weight, that's on rollers. I have all my dimple dies mounted up, and I just kind of eyeballed all these and then have an actual hanger. So this is what I did. You guys can do it however you want, but this is gonna make it a lot easier for me to get around the shop. Plus I got more tooling in one spot. All right, so now we can start on putting a roll cage in this thing, but the way we're gonna have to do it first is have something to establish it to, like something that's actually gonna hold it. Because if I just mount it to the body and the body rips off the frame, then it's pretty much useless. I'm sure you've seen that before. Secondly, the way I want to do this is with an affordable bender. Now, why do I use affordable bender? 2 reasons. 1, it's actually pretty affordable. 2, this unit is actually made here in the USA, minus the bottle jack, of course. To find something that is made in the USA that's affordable is pretty rare to me, and it does a very, very nice job. I bend all my roll cages with this bender actually, or with the old one that had the pump jack. I did upgrade it to the air style, but it works good. So one of the things that matters a lot to me, especially when it comes to a roll cage, is safety. So you're probably never gonna see me build a cage out of poop pipe because it crushes. I've used it before when I was poor and didn't have an idea of how to do it. Before we had the internet to prove of things wrong and right, the tubing or the pipe actually crushes. Like, it crushes pretty good. It'll survive one roll, but that's no better than like a stock roll cage. So let's get this thing up in the air and see what we can weld to. There's a couple of you that got upset that I chopped this roof off, but you gotta remember that's part of the rules, is cutting the roof off. We have to have no roof and just a cage. First thing I think we need to do is pull this plastic off, because this is completely useless to everything I'm doing. Shanna can probably do the other side if she'd like.
Yes.
Looks like this thing's literally just held on by the plastic Christmas trees. So you pull the centerpiece out, if I can get it. Come on. Probably been in there since 1996. Almost 30 years, probably 30 years if you figure in the time it took them to make it. And then we just pull it out. So we'll get the rest of these and get these out of the way. Don't think that would survive any rocks. Still a little bit of rubber on here from all my burnout action. But we got to get this out of here. Well, of course it's got a nut on the top. Means I got to peel up the carpet here to just get to the darn mud flap thing. Oh yeah. Wires I don't need. Now let's get into here. Oh man, look at that. All right, so there's the disaster that I need to get. These are the actual bolts. They are like cast in there. Now I can just cut them out, I guess, just to get a darn mud flap off. We need to get that out of the way because it's looking like, as thick as this chunk is here, that we're better off cutting it off here across the body line. I'll trim this stuff off. This is aluminum still, but this is steel. We can then weld it to this back plate and then tie this into the frame. Because you can see here, here's your body mount, and that's just this tiny, tiny little bolt. I mean, that's not even as big as my finger there. That is not strong enough for a rollover. So I'd rather have a full plate here, and then we can tie that down to the frame and then go up from there and cage this thing in. All right, so I pulled all the wires that were in this B pillar out, pushed them back here. They're just kind of hidden behind the seat. We got everything cleaned out where it's open to access. So now I just need to decide where I want to weld this, and I think it's going to be right here. So I think I'm just going to cut just below this floor pan, because I don't need to get too crazy with this. Like, it just needs to work. If we cut just below the floor pan here, cut it all the way across, get rid of that B pillar because that's useless at this point, and work our way out. I know that I'm gonna need to give myself, I think it's what you guys call it, what I've been told is the camel trim. Because if you guys remember one of these that was sponsored by Camel, it had like a trim and fold done on these fenders. What I'm gonna do is just sawzall the fenders. We'll go ahead and get this part cut out and get some clearance here so that we can weld in our box. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with these dog bone grinder wheels because I think that they don't burn out. So when you're cutting through stuff thick, it works out, or even stuff that's thin, kind of like that. But they shoot stuff everywhere. I don't know if you can see how shiny my chest is. All of that metal shavings, it just comes flinging hard. And it's really hard on a grinder. Like, this thing is cooking now. So I'm gonna let this thing cool off for a little bit. Hopefully it'll continue working. It kind of stinks, so. At least I got the first cut across here. Obviously I gotta clean it up. Now we gotta get in here, chop this out, and then go across the bottom. So I might actually use the plasma cutter to do that, just because it might be quicker. Oh man, my neck's like hurting. Look at that burnout tire. After assessing the situation, I noticed that there was way too much undercoating on here that I didn't want to deal with, so I figured a torch would be the best option, and I can just torch all this stuff out. Oxyacetylene, baby. Shazam. Yeah. Now I can come in here with a grinder and clean a lot of this up. I only caught the carpet on fire like 3 times. I'm gonna go ahead and chop this off and just get this thing out of the way completely, because we know we don't want that. Then we'll probably notch out spots here for where we want to tie into the frame. So you can see here, we don't want to cut this out because this is body mount. So we got body mount here and a body mount up there at that control arm. So we want to make sure that that stays structurally together. $54 should be more than enough. So to pull the B-pillar out, all I did was drill out the spot welds and then pop the thing off. And now we got it out of our way. We now have a nice clean rock slider cage mounting area. So I got my measurement for where I want the rock slider to be. And then what we did here is just took a square, lined it out, did 1 inch back, and then that is the front of the rock slider. The rear does the same with just 1 inch. The reason I marked it all the way around is because that thing is 3/8 thick. It is heavy. It is 3 by 6, and there's no way that Shannon and I are going to pick it up and then have something that can hold it level while I cut it. So right here, while it sits like this, I can just cut it with a cutoff wheel at every angle. Make sense? If not, watch me do it. Don't think that will ever bend. That's pretty stout. If I bend that, I've bent everything. Oh yeah. Now that is worth mounting a cage to, it's worth hitting rocks on, because we never know, this thing's gonna be pretty low to the ground only with 33-inch tall tires. So I want something stout to start with. Also because I don't know who the non-off-road YouTuber is that's gonna be with me yet, and I'm sure we'll all be signing waivers, but I don't want anything to fail on them either. All right, we're gonna make this British tough with USA stuff. Bam. Now I'm gonna come in here is just tack this up in here, all these openings, so that I have a nice solid point that it's gonna hold it up, and then we're gonna run a tube from here to the frame. Doom, doom. That'll make things pretty tip-top. All right, well, I got it stitched underneath. I got it stitched up top. This isn't the part that's actually gonna be structural. This is just to keep it to the body. Now we can pick it back up, and then I can tie it in to the frame. So that's what's gonna make this thing nice and stout, is the tubes going from here to the frame, and we didn't lose any ground clearance doing this. All right, so I got all my tubes cut here that are gonna tie in across to the frame. I just need to put it up in here like so, nice tight fit. And now we can burn that in. That is gonna be a really solid point for roll cage stuff. Whew. All right, that was a lot of welding. The tubes are welded in, the rock slider is welded on. I do want to go ahead and put gussets in from here down to the frame, and that's just going to add some structural rigidity to the entire system. I will go ahead and save you guys the trouble of watching me do it again on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working, and then the next time you see this, both of these sides will be done. And just like that, it's a new day. I got the other side done. I want you to see this. Also went ahead and welded gussets in on the tubes as well. So everything's gusseted. We have nice structural support that we didn't lose any ground clearance on. And this gives us a great point to put a cage to, which what I want to do is start with our tube running here. And the easiest way to figure that out is start with one of these. This is just like a true angle square. And all I'm gonna do is come up here, kind of match this look. That's all we're looking for right now, is just to match that look. That looks pretty darn close. I might just come up a little more. That looks pretty close to the windshield. So that is gonna be our first bend. Now the next thing I wanna do is take my tape measure here, very simply measure from this plate to the center of bend, which is 26.5 inches. Now as you get better with your bender, you're gonna use less excess. You're gonna know exactly where your bend falls and things like that. You can always try to measure it and do all that work. What you don't want to do is come up short. So you always just want to have extra tube, because you're going to have foot here, foot there, 6 inches here, 6 inches there, that you're going to be cutting out no matter what. All right, first thing I need to do is take my 1.5 inch dies out and put in 1 3/4 inch. That must have been the last thing I bent. Probably the bumper on the S10. All right, so we got our 1 3/4 inch dies in. I took my first stick. Most of these 1 3/4 inch DOM sticks are right at about 21 feet. I cut 2 sticks 8 foot long, mostly because it's gonna be more manageable to work with as far as bending and doing all that stuff by myself. I don't have a crew of people in here to help me hold tubing and do everything else. So that's what I'm doing. Secondly, what I want to do here is mark where my first bend is going to be, because I know that I want it right at 26.5 inches. I'm going to set these side by side and mark 26.5 inches. Now, if you're doing double bends and you're not used to your bender, let me show you a little trick here. If you want to make your mark where your first bend is going to be, and you got kind of an idea where your next bend is going to be, you can just mark every foot on here. And even if you want to mark 6 inches in between or whatever, you can do that. And that way you got a tie-in point from your first bend to your second bend. You bend your next one, you know you're in the exact same spot, you're not trying to measure something off, and you can bend the next one at the exact same spot as well. So what I did here is marked my 26, and then I got 6 inch increments going all the way back. That way, whatever I decide to make my second bend at, because we are gonna come up, bend back, and then bend across at this rain gutter height. So I know I'm gonna have a second bend in the same tube, and I wanna make sure that it matches each tube, that each tube's the same, and then I can do my bends together at the same time. So I'm not trying to match one whole side to another whole side. I can do it bend to bend and match them like that. And once again, if you're not sure what I meant when I said it, watch what I mean, because I don't want you to be intimidated by this. An affordable bender is affordable. DOM is not really affordable, but it's safe. This is how to do a cage correctly. You want your exterior tubes to be DOM. One of the other things I like to do too is go ahead and take some penetrating oil, put it on my die, anywhere that's gonna rotate, spin, have pressure on it. And that's just gonna make things work better and be smoother. It'll also keep from scarring your tubing. Okay, now, because I know my first bend is gonna be right around 26.5 inches, I'm just gonna bend it at 26.5 inches, and that gives me plenty of length here to cut down whatever I need. Now, if I was really, really worried about it, I'd come back 2 or 3 inches, and I'd probably still be fine, but I just wanna show you guys how to do this, a basic way to set it up. Now, there's my mark, there's my die, everything's lined up. You want to tighten up this little horseshoe clamp. Once that's tight, make sure my ram's tight. This is where I could actually use the bottle jack part if I wanted to. Obviously, I have the air hooked up to it. The best thing about this is I already have the angle I want, so I can set this here and let it do its thing. You can see here, I'm holding this flat on the table. We are pretty much there. But there's also a thing called spring back or kickback from the tube. The tube is originally set straight. Once you let that bend off, it's gonna want to settle back a little bit. So I'm gonna go just a couple clicks more. Okay, now you can kind of see I went just past it right there. Now what I'm gonna do is mark my die right in line with where it stopped here. Now I know exactly where I want to stop that one. Now watch this. When I let this out, you'll see the spring back right there. that's the spring back. And actually, so it had a little more spring back than I expected. You can see right there, this is still up higher. So I need to go just a little more than that even. New mark, easy enough. Let it out. And now we are pretty darn good. So that's how we're gonna make our first bend. Now I already have that bend bent. I have my other tube marked to match that exact thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the other tube in, match the exact same bend, and now I don't even have to hold this here. I can just go to the mark on my die, stop, and I know that I have 2 of the exact same bent tubes. And that's a nice, smooth bend put in by that affordable bender. The other nice thing about marking that is, for some reason, if my bend isn't perfect, I have a mark of where the front of this tube was in the die, so that I can put it right back in, catch the bend, and not risk kinking the tubing. But what we should have here is 2 very much the same bent pieces of tube, especially if we line it up at the lines. You can see there, they're exactly the same, no weird kick out at the end, same flush up front. Unless you're building something really weird, you usually want your cage to be symmetrical, left to right. That's why I'm showing you how to do it this way. This is the way I like to do it, and I think it makes things a little easier and keeps things a little truer, especially for anybody that might be a little bit OCD. Now that I know I got this tube here, and I'm matching this way, so I want this to bend out and come flush right like this. This is the rain gutter of this car, and that's where I want the main hoop of this tube to be. It will come up just like that, and I just need to take a tape measure, angle finder. And I am 100% eyeballing this in case you're wondering, but I think we'll get it close enough. I usually have a pretty good micrometer. Okay, and that is actually about where I want that bend. So I'm gonna take my Sharpie here, and I'm just gonna mark this. So that is where I want the top of the tubing, or the base of the tubing, I guess I should say, at when I come across. So I gotta bend it up here to catch that mark. Now, this is the great part about doing things symmetrically and getting your marks on here, because now I can just go like this. Here's the piece that I didn't put up. Here's the piece I did. Because I already have marks here, I can make sure this thing is completely symmetrical with itself before marking both of these pieces of tubing. Or that's the top of our roof line, the base of our tube. Now before you say, that's gonna be way too low for your head, I wanna make this roof look like the original roof. So when I do this cage, it's gonna look real similar to the original Land Rover roof. Every bending manufacturer probably has a different radius on their dies. What I really like about the affordable bender is most of their dies have a 7-inch radius. And once you figure it out, like, you're pretty good on all of it, except their small tubing stuff, I think, is a 5-inch radius. So with that 7-inch radius, what that means is you're gonna have 7 inches of height to make 90 degrees. So if you want a full 90, you're gonna have to use 7 inches of height out of your tube to get that 90 degrees. I am gonna use maybe half of that to get here. So I just pulled it back up to this yellow line right here. This is 100% why I like bending vertical. If you've ever bent horizontal, you are sitting here getting low to the ground and trying to figure out and get it all lined up. I can stand back here, stand straight up, not hurt my back, stare at this thing and see exactly what I need. When it comes to compound bends, and you want to keep it straight, you want to have this tube in line with that bender. It makes things really, really nice to just do it like that. Perfect. I also think personally it's a lot easier to do it like this because you're not going to be able, with these mild bends, you're not going to be able to put an angle finder on here. An angle finder won't work when you're setting it on a tubing at this angle. So you really do have to use your eyeball. So you want it flush with each side, and basically you can flush it up with the bender. Now that I have that set up, my marks lined up, I still have my pre-bent angle finder here to let me know exactly what I need. Let's bend this thing. That's pretty much perfect. Nice. That was a good guess. So my spring back guess, after one shot, I could guess how much spring back I was gonna have, and it went perfect on the money. Now I know exactly what I need. I marked the die. At this point now, with a compound bend, I'm gonna have to take this horseshoe clamp back off just so I can get it. Now, the nice thing about these affordable benders is you basically just have two bolts. The pins are keepers. You have a 3/4 headed bolt, 1/2 inch bolt, and then you have a 7/16 bolt, I think, which is just a 9/16 ratchet. Either way, if you had a dedicated table like I do, just for bending and notching, you can actually keep just a 3/4 and a 9/16, and you have everything you need to change out your dies and bend stuff. Now, before I go ahead and bend my next one, I'm gonna check it out up there, just see how close I got. Nice, straight bends. Square there. You can see here we're in line with that roof line. I just need to cut out that height out of my A-pillar post here, and then we will be right on the money. Now we gotta do is match the other side. So now that we got that bent, we know our bend is correct. Now we just need to get our height right. And the way I'm gonna do that is pretty simple. Let me turn this down just a skosh so you can see what I'm doing. We know that that bar is gonna come out here somewhere. So what I'm gonna do is just take this is the height I wanted at, sitting here on right above this as our rain gutter. We can take this tape measure, hook it right there, and just come up, set this on, and it is 46 inches. So 46 inches is gonna be our B-pillar. So what I can do is I'll cut two pieces at 46 inches, and we will set our bottom of our notch at 46 inches. So we'll do one for each side, and then I can set those in here, just tack them real light, and then we can put our A-pillar piece in. That's also the beginning of our somewhat roof line rain gutter. All right, now all I'm doing is just checking to make sure that my B-pillar isn't too far back. It'll still catch the tube. Now I just got to cut down that front end of that A-pillar piece to match the same 46 inches coming up. Easiest way to do that is just take my square, run across here, run a tape measure, run a square at the bottom, and then I know exactly where my 46 inches is, and then I can lop it off. That simple. I got a straight line right here, so I just took my square, squared these up. That is the point of where I need to cut. Just like that. Easy enough. This is where, if Shannon was in here, it helped me a bunch. Right when I did. I'm gonna go get some help. All right, so what I did here is I took a piece 1.5 inches, shoved it inside of here. I got Shanna holding it now so it won't keep falling on me. And now I can go ahead and weld this up where it's in line with where it should be. Should be able to look good. Alright. So now that I have it tacked up, I have it where I want it. I'm gonna put a plate here, and then this bend falls along. I might even cap this, I haven't decided yet. We have this set with our 90s, so we know it's here. And then all the structure for the support for us is all back in here. So like your seatbelt bar, your crossbars, everything's gonna be back here behind your cab. Now everything from here is still going to be a roll cage in case one day you decide to put, ow, that was my toe. In case one day you decide to put something in the back seat or put a back seat back in it, I'm still going to have a full functioning roll cage, but we will have a sleeve right here. So this is a piece of 1.5 inches Actually, I think I have a piece of 1.5 H-rue, so that's electric welded versus DOM. DOM is rolled on mandrel, so it has actually got no seam in it, and it is a lot stronger. That's why you always want it for the exterior tubes. What I have in here is a piece of 1.5 H-rue, H-R-E-W, heat rolled electric welded, so it has a little seam in it. That's not gonna matter, even though it's exterior, because it's interior for this, and that's gonna add that strength where there's this plate, or where there's a split. This is also saving me from trying to figure out another bend, because what I need to do from here is come around here, and then I wanna bend it in to match this body line. Like I said, the goal is to keep this thing looking like a Land Rover Discovery. The one thing I do need to do here though is I moved the B pillar back because I'm gonna put in a hip bar here. I'm gonna do a support bar here coming down, and I want as much room to get in and out of this seat as possible. I still want everything to be protected so that we don't ever get hurt in here, but I do want to have an easier egress and access in and out of that seat. Part of the reason also why I moved that B-pillar back is that the original B-pillar was right here. Now if I put that there and I flop this thing, my head's gonna be this close to a tube, and it's just gonna make me smoke that tube, which I don't want. Also, some of you are probably wondering why I chose DOM. And the real reason is because it holds up. I've used poop pipe, I've used H-rue, and DOM holds up better externally on rocks. That's what I want. Now, it is more expensive. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, it is more expensive, but we are talking about your livelihood here, the safety of your brain, of your body. I want it to be right. Now, if you're doing an interior cage, I did the interior cage on the S10 with H-rue, the heat rolled electric welded, because number one, it's not gonna be hitting rocks externally. Two, if I roll it, I just need it to save me, which it will do, but the cab is still gonna crush because it's an interior cage. So at that point, I'm probably gonna find a new cab and build a new cage anyway. You can see here, it's a nice smooth body line going out. So now we're just gonna match this side to it, and then we'll move on to the next step. We got both tubes in, both B-pillars in, everything's tacked up, and then we just have ratchet straps kind of keeping it straight. So now I took angle finders and just kind of found to make sure that that bar's straight with this bar, and so on and so forth. So everything's kind of just temporarily held together. One of the things I've been fighting in here is this axle. Now, I don't want it outside because it's freshly painted and it's all new, and I want to put it under Rats Nest, but it's getting in my way with these jacks. So I got these. Those come from Pivotal Manufacturing. If you look up his Instagram, man, like he puts his cars on these things and it can just roll wherever. These are designed for 12 tons, so they roll smooth. Like one hand, you put them under a car and you can push wherever you need. I'm using it for my axle so that I can get it where I need and out of the way. It's gonna make life a lot nicer. Now they also come with these little J-hooks if you want to strap that thing down. I'm not too worried about it because I don't plan on it going anywhere. But now I can move this axle out of my way. Now I want to go ahead and at least get a couple bars in here to get this thing solid. So right here, I need 57 3/4. That's inside to inside. That's how I'm going to measure this because that's where the inside of my notch is going to be. I've already cut a notch on this tube here. Now what I need to do is cut my notch there. So from inside of this notch to inside of that notch is going to be 57 3/4. What I need to do now is take another 1 3/4 piece, set it right here, and line it up with the end of that tube notcher. Now, if you can make each side of here disappear at the same time on this, so you hold this up and you make that disappear at the same time, you know you're lined up. That way I know that my notches are the same. Then we can go ahead, drill this notch out, set it up there, get everything level-ish, and tack it in. We now have our first piece. I need to go ahead and clean this up real quick. There we go. Now what I need to do is actually take a couple measurements from here down, make sure everything's kind of true. Even after doing all that, I'm gonna stand back here and eyeball it as well, because you can measure 1,000 times and it could still not look right, and you might just have to tweak it 1/8 inch here or there to make it right. I'm just gonna go from the base of this windshield frame to the center of the tube, which is 27 3/4. Base of this windshield tube, which is 27 5/8. So, according to this, I need to come up 1/8 of an inch. But aesthetically, now we need to come back here and look at it and say, we have this going across here, and it actually looks correct. It actually more or less looks like this side's a little low, even though it's this side should be the one that goes up. So because we're working off of a car and not a chassis that I had set flat on the ground and welded and made everything true at the base, the top might have to be adjusted because the body might not be exactly true either. All right, so I did actually have to have this side a little bit higher like I thought, and the reason why is if you look at this hood, the windshield frame actually disappears there on this side of the hood, and this side is still quite a bit higher. Even though I was measuring off of the windshield frame is not in line with the hood, and the hood and the fenders are what you're gonna see. So I did go ahead and bring this side up just 1/8 of an inch, and even with that strap there, you can see it's a little bit tighter on this side than that side, but that strap comes out lower in the tube, where this side it comes out almost in the center of the tube. So that's your 1/8 inch difference there, but it actually looks aesthetically straight back here. A lot of just little tweaks. Now, like I said, if this was a rock buggy, totally different, because my base is gonna be straight. I'm gonna mount my hood straight to my windshield frame. But for a cage, we're gonna be good. So this gave us our separation now. Now we have some structure here, which is what we want. We want a little bit of structure to keep everything together. Like I said before, I've gotten the inside out leveled out on both sides where everything kind of matches up. You can see how this matches up to here. It's matching up to here as well. So we know we're in a pretty good spot structurally as far as that goes. Now we need to build our upper tube. Like I was saying before, I want to have this thing look like a Land Rover with the cage, which means I'm going to come off this B-pillar and come up and over to give us that structural height, to give us that look. And then we'll come off of that and come up even higher for this back area, because we know that the Rovers are tall in the back side there, which is fine. We're gonna go to Sand Hollow, Utah. Like, trees don't exist over there, so it doesn't really matter how high or low your cage is, as long as it's high enough to clear your head. The other reason I'm gonna do that, and let me show you right here, is sitting in here, I have a decent amount of clearance here. Now I have about 2.5 fingers from this, which isn't really structurally enough. I want a full fist of height above the cage. The reason I want that is if you roll over, you have what you call a spine stretch, seatbelt stretch, all these things that are gonna bring you up higher in your cage. So people that put their cages real close to their head, they haven't rolled yet. And if they do, their head will know the difference. So I still plan on wearing a helmet, but that's why we're gonna come up higher with our structural part above this pillar here. That's gonna give me more than that height. And if I got clearance, anybody else that drives this should have clearance. Now, this one, I don't want to go to the inside, I want to go to the center because I'm coming off the top. So where does it roll off? Right there. So center to center at the top of this B-pillar is 58 3/4 inches. So that is what we're looking for, 58 3/4 inches. So what I'm going to do for this roof is a hoop bar going over the top. And the way I'm going to do that is first I cut a 3-foot piece. Now that sounds short, and it is. Reason being is I'm gonna do a bend this way and then a bend that way. I'm gonna split it in the middle just like this with a 1.5 inch piece of tubing to go in here, and that is gonna be my center bar. Now when I cut that in the middle, I can support it. Most of the reason why is, number one, you're trying to get 2 bends in one spot. Secondly, it is really challenging to get the bend over and bend because I don't want to do a straight 90 because then I have a 7-inch radius. If you remember, that'd be 7 inches up all the way up front here. And that's way too tall. Even though one of you guys commented that I need to make my cage taller than Matt's to assert dominance, I'm gonna leave mine a little lower than that. Remember, like I said, I already got 2 fingers. I just need to fit a couple more. to be safe, which should be more than enough, like I said, for anybody else. I'm 6'5" and I have a very tall torso. So taller than most people that are my height. They're a lot more legs than me usually. So first thing we're gonna do is we got a 3-foot piece. I'm gonna throw a notch in it right now. Reason being, we're gonna put it right in the bender at the notch. And to do that, it's really hard to cut a notch in after you have a bend in your way. Now you can see here, if I had a bend right here, this would be really hard to latch into that. Where now, I can set this in right here. My notch has already happened. Don't have to do anything. Now to check this, I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm gonna set this in and then make sure that it's square to the table. Then I can go ahead and push it back as far as I need to. And if I'm really worried about it turning on me, I can take a Sharpie, mark the tube, mark the die, and then I know that it's in line. There we go. That easy. Get my tape measure, and I want to have about 4 inches of height. So all I'm going to do here is check this bend to there. So I need to give it a little more. Should be about there. That's about 3.5. A little more. That is 4. So go ahead and mark it. Would you look at that? That looks darn nice. Oh yeah. Now one of the other things I did is I took my angle finder, put it here on the hood, and then I put it here up on this tube to make sure they match. Now I'm 1 degree high to that side. That's probably just the rig and the concrete sitting a degree out. Not that big of a deal. To tack this in, I just have to match that exact same thing, which I should easily be able to do. Putting this here, making sure that I'm lined up over there pretty close. Right there. Look at that. Oh, I had it too. Dang it. .4, still high on this side. This is .9 high on this side. Like you're never gonna see that. That's good for temporary till I get the other side lined out. Easy enough, other than my tack's not holding, but I think I forgot to turn, yep. Got to turn the gas on. Sometimes I do dumb things. All right, so I took the upper one back off after I made the second one, set it up there, measured the center, and then I'm gonna take out an 1/8 inch out of the center right here. So this is where they crossed, and this is where I'm gonna cut it. Same with this one. This is where it crossed. The longer line's where I'm gonna cut it. That's gonna give me just a nice little bit of gap to get a good root weld in that center. But the reason I'm not worried about it once we put it in is I still gotta do a seatbelt bar, and then we're gonna do a center bar coming down. That's gonna give it its strength. So even though it's a seamed tube, it'll be plenty strong, trust me. Perfect. All right. Get this one started in here. Now right here, I have my perfectly bent, lined up however I need to. If I need to stretch it out a little, I can stretch it out. If I need to pull it back a little, I can pull it back. And we have our roof bar centered up right where our support bar is gonna come down. This is gonna take a brunt of hit. So now it's actually got extra rigidity with the strength of the sleeve, plus the tubes that are going to come from it to keep structural integrity. I went ahead and cut out a couple plates, welded them here, so that way this now is not going to try to structurally move this way, so I can let this out and that one stays where it needs to be, which in turn allows me to put this where it needs to be in line with that. Gives it a little bit of structure to the body as well. Even though I'm still probably going to cap it here, we have some there, and then obviously I'll burn that in. Once we get everything set where it needs to go, then I will finish welding all these tubes in where exactly I want them. All right. When you have a butt weld here between two pieces of tube that you have sleeved, it can still get off center. So the trick is to take 2 pieces of angle iron, come in here and pinch it together. Now it's smooth against here and here, and it's going to make a nice straight tube for us to weld up. There we go. Now it's nice and trued up. We are looking good. Things are starting to come together. Everything's tacked in here pretty good, and nothing's moving at this point. So this is kind of where you have a really good stance of how this thing's gonna sit. Now I need to start making my roof pieces here to kind of match this, because anything that's exterior, like I said, I want it to be DOM. So right here, I'm gonna come up and come over, but it's gonna be at a lower height, because if you remember, the roof comes up and then it slopes up really high for the back. So we're gonna have a lower height hoop here. So each one of these 2 pieces here was just under 3 feet. It was like 3 inches short of 3 feet. Because I'm gonna be doing even less, I think that I can still get away with that. So I'll go ahead and cut 2 of those pieces for the pre-bend. I don't know if you guys have ever used a cold saw blade, but man, it makes things quick. Your fingers don't get hot. You can touch these. It's nice, clean cuts. And they're really not overly pricey. The blade's kind of pricey, but as long as you take care of the blade, it kind of takes care of you, like everything. Makes it quicker. You don't have to use it if you're trying to be on a budget. Just like the hole saw that I have here from Affordable Benders. So this hole saw, the reason I changed out to it from the Harbor Freight one. The Harbor Freight one worked for me for years. You can get them from Harbor Freight, Eastwood. They're pretty reasonable. This one's a little bit more, but inside here is needle bearing kits as opposed to brass bushing. So the cheaper ones have a brass bushing in there. This shaft starts getting wobbly. Next thing you know, you're trying to do hole saw cuts like that. Where this one with the needle bearings, once you do it once, you don't have to worry about it after that. So now, because I am going for this bent roof arch look, which isn't my normal style of cage. Usually I want it flat, smooth, and take up the least amount of space so that I can slide over things or under things the best. But because I want to match that, I'm gonna do one that's a little less bend for the front and then one that's a higher bend for the back. So I'm just gonna look at my line here, and we're just gonna totally eyeball this. We'll probably stop here or something for this bend, and then I'll mark that, and that'll be my bend for the front 2 tubes. I'm just kind of throwing it together is because we can just throw it together, because we're kind of making our own tube heights for all this. So we're doing our own thing. We just want to make it symmetrical. That's why I mark the die, and then that's why I have 2 perfectly matching tube notched bends. Bam, bada, bam. Perfect, perfect. Once you figure out some really simple basics about bending tubing, it makes it really quick, really easy. Like I said, especially when you have that bender bending vertically, it makes life really nice. All right, so I went ahead and measured between my B pillar tubes and my A pillar tubes. They're exactly the same distance apart, which means my cage is nice and symmetrical, which also means I can take this tube here, because I guessed the length when I cut it. I can match it up right to it at the same height, and I know exactly where I need to cut this thing off at. Passenger. Bam. And obviously, I can do the same for the driver's side. That's going to make it easy to find my center point without having to do what I did here and tack everything up and work it all out. Now I already know this is the center of my rig. So we'll cut these 2 pieces, and then we'll sleeve it the exact same way, tack them in up here. One of the other things I've been doing here is prepping the tube. So that's probably the most important part of having good welds on your tubing, is prepping it. There's stuff they put on this tubing to keep it from rusting. So you just need to take your flap disc, clean this end off, and obviously because we're going to weld here, we want to clean this end off as well. So right here, even though I notched them in the same place, I bent them in the same place, you can see if you follow this middle tube to the back tube, that it disappears on this side and there's still a gap over here, which means this side's just a little high. Now I put my angle finder on it, it's only 1/10 of a degree, but that's gonna drive me nuts. So I'm gonna go ahead and just trim a little bit off of that notch to get that where I want it. Now, without a doubt, my gap here is farther than I want. I usually just want a 1/4 inch. That one was a little tight, and I wanted a little more gap. I messed up this cut, but I still have plenty of sleeve here. And I'm gonna run a tube here and across this center bar. All of this is gonna get double supported, double, triple supported. I'm not overly concerned with that gap in this instance because this is not the major structure. The weight is gonna come here up to this. This is one solid tube. This is sleeve, so technically this is thicker. This is still 120 wall here on top of a tube coming back this way to the center of that one, which is also 120 wall DOM. Same concept applies. We want to go ahead and clamp this up, make sure that it's nice and true, and then tack it together. Okay. Oh yeah. Look at that. Good job, Colt. There we go. Ta-da. Just barely caught it. Now that I have the roof structure tacked in, I want to go ahead and get my seatbelt bar in here and get this bar just tacked in as well. So one of the things I wanted to talk about with the roll cage is, even though I'm doing these higher humps here, the main part of the cage, I'm trying to keep the least amount of bends. The less bends, the less chance you have for a crush point, because this traditionally is going to make this weaker. So this could be a fail point, so I'm going to have to do a bar down to keep that from bending. That's why I don't like seeing B-pillars with a bend in them. When B-pillars have a bend, you're creating a crush point. With this being straight, that's going to make this a lot stronger structurally and everything. Now, my seatbelt bar, hip bar here, I did put a bend in it. The reason being is so that when my seat's all the way back, I can do my crossbars down here and my head won't hit this tube. Coming from this point down at the angle, just a little bit, center and crossbar. That's gonna keep this cage from going side to side. Like I said, if I had a bend in this, then I would 100% not have a bend in this. Then I would have this bar be completely straight, because then I want to have as much structure here. Now, hopefully you never have to put a bend in your B-pillar, but you never know sometimes. Sometimes things just happen. Cherokees are really good for needing a bend in your B-pillar. One of the things I forgot, if you guys remember, was all of this. This massive amount of wire loom that feeds the back end ran up through the roof. And so my intent was to tie it back up through here, because getting it out of here would require me removing this entire dash, gutting everything out, taking all the plugs out. This goes to a fuse panel. I don't want to deal with all that. So I messed up, because now I can't get past there. So I'm going to have to take this back out. I'll make a mark here, and then I'm going to take my cutoff wheel, cut these, pull this out, move the wire up, and then set it right back where it was and put my mark on. There we go. Cut wire, don't break. Cool. Fixed. Now what we have is enough here to go ahead and burn this in. I got a couple straps here just to kind of keep it true in the back. We know that we have all this stuff welded here, plus these plates to keep this from going side to side this way. We know it can't go front and back because of those plates as well. And now that I have bars above and below, everything is structural. Not enough for rollover yet, but structural enough to go ahead and burn all these in. So then we have a solid set to work with going forward. So that's what we're gonna do now. Come on. All right, time to cue the music. So we have everything welded in. Now it's all nice and solid. We know it's not going to go anywhere, but we have our butt weld here. Butt the butt, right? Now, I see a lot of people, this is where they mess up their butt weld. They come in here with their grinder and go like this. What happens then is you get a bunch of low spots in your tube and it doesn't look very good. It's very obvious that it's a butt weld. If you come at it this way, 90 degrees with it, what that's gonna do is it's gonna have a lot flatter surface and it's gonna keep your tube smooth. So once we grind this down with the flap disc, I'll come back in with the DA sander and we'll clean it up. But a good butt weld, you don't even know that it was there. Except for you guys, you're gonna know it's here because I'm showing you. Now you can see here exactly what I'm talking about. There's no low spots in this tube. I can run my finger across it. I feel nothing. Obviously it's shinier, but we just clean this thing up by going with it as opposed to against it. It makes a nice smooth transition. Now, as you can see, because we used the sleeve, because we used angle iron to clamp it and make sure it's nice and true, and then we sanded it 90 degrees of the weld, or in line with the weld, however you want to look at it. I hit this with paint. Nobody's ever even going to know that there was a butt weld right there. Brought to you by doing it my way. So next thing I want to do here is a hip bar. A hip bar is what's going to protect you from a rock coming in and crushing your hip. You don't want a rock to crush your hip. I want to put a little angle on it, and I don't want it to be straight because I want a little bit of space for the driver. If you're wide, like me, then you want that extra space. So I'm gonna probably put a little bend in it and then come down. But if I go straight across here, there's not enough room to climb in here. So we can't go like that. But I do want it to match this angle. So I might come down to about here. Maybe even right to the top of the plate. Need to look at it and see. That seems like I could still climb in here. Obviously the seat's pushed all the way up, but I think you could still climb in here pretty easily with enough kick down here. I haven't decided if I want to go deeper than that or not. I think that'll be good. That's also the great thing about blue tape. I can go ahead and play with this, see where I want it. That gives me some ideas. Now, because I'm gonna go at this angle and I want to put a bend in it, similar to this, where I want my notch in kind of before I put my bend in, because it's gonna be easier to do. I can take my true angle here, come in just like this, and now I know what angle I need to notch that at. The nice thing about that is going in from that side, that angle should still be the same, like this. Yep. Because these tubes are straight. So I have this tube vertical, that tube vertical. So my notch is the same on all four ends. I just have to have it set up the correct way. So let's do this. I figured since I haven't shown you, since we haven't had to do any angled notches, now's the time to work on that. What I'm gonna do is just set this in line here with that, and then I'm gonna turn this till it matches it. That is pretty darn close. That's where I'm going to put my notch. Same concept applies. Now I can grab just the outside though, so I don't have to. I'm actually going to use less tube to make my notch, which is nice. Because I'm still bending this basically the same way, the only thing I need to make sure is that I have the deep side in on one, and then I have the deep side in going the other way on the other, because I want my kickouts on each side. I don't want to make too symmetrical. I want to make them almost opposite. Still symmetrical, but what would you call that? Oppositely symmetrical? So I'm just going to mark this and then the top of this so I know which one goes where. But as far as getting it level, that concept is still exactly the same. And then I just got to pick my angle. That looks good to me. Now we have symmetrically opposite pieces. Let's check it out. So in theory, these should be exactly the same, except the notches are different. See, this one goes that way, this one goes this way. Now that we have that, I can make this go away. Set this here. Now we just need to match that notch over here. Just come in here. This is the end of that tubing, and this is the top right here. There we go. So now we have the inside of the hole and the top. So I know that I need it like this to match it. Just like that. That's not too bad. I think that will work. Now we can clean it up, tack it on. And there we have it. A nice kicker that also gives us a good amount of structure. It's DOM, so it'll hold up a lot better to a hit on a rock. I like it. A little bit of room. My goal with this thing is to match some aesthetics, but if I was going for full rock crawler, obviously the roof bars would be flat. It'd be a little higher. And then safety. So that's why I'm building this all out of DOM, at least for the external stuff. All right, so we got the passenger side in, driver side's in. We now have structural integrity. Not only do we have it this way, we have it this way. The biggest thing now is getting some support in the center bars and then getting some triangulation, like putting a little angle in here and an angle in here and getting these supported so nothing can twist. Obviously coming from there up to here, things like that. So the next thing I'm gonna do is the center of the cage here. Just boom, boom, and we'll go right up the middle. Even though I have tubing I want to do in the back here, I'm focusing on the front because this is where the seats are. This is where the structural integrity, where the safety matters. Back here is going to be like where the cooler matters. So if the cage tweaks or whatever, it's not the end of the world. Also, you can see here I've been playing with the tape. This is where another bar goes in to the frame, is right there. So that's why I would come down to that point, come to this bend down, that bend down, and then where this bend is, coming down to give it all that strength. I don't know. We're playing with it. It's tape. So for that little small filler piece, just to save a few bucks, I did find a piece of A-true, and you can always find that because it has this welded seam on it, and you can actually feel it inside of here. But we're gonna go ahead and use this piece. Now I already notched one side, so all I need to do here, actually, before I get too far, is mark my 6 3/8. Okay, so that's the inside of my notch. Yeah, tastes like metal. That's the inside of my notch, and then I can just come over here, set this up to where that is, get it kind of snug, and then do the same thing with this piece, line it up with the notcher, because we know we're going straight, and that's it. Now we can notch it. Ta-da! Now it's perfect. Now I'll just take a couple measurements from the inside of the tube so I have my center, and we'll tack it in. Now we'll just double check this side. Make sure that I'm correct. That looks pretty centered-ish. Guess we'll figure it out as we go. So we know that that upper piece is the center point of the entire cage. It's where rocks are gonna probably hit if you're on your roof. I wanna do that piece out of DOM for sure. So we'll cut a piece here, 25 5/8. And because it's a straight one again, all I gotta do, come back here, set this in, line it up with that. I must be getting tired and need to drink more water because I'm starting to cramp up. Let's get this one. I'll show you a trick here. So we still got to clean the tube up, but because I know that this is the exact length and I'm going to have to force it in that way, if I give it just a little bit of angle on this side and then a little bit of angle on the opposite side, I can slide it in a little bit easier into that spot. That's what I did in the last one. I just didn't show it, and I should have. So I'm showing it now. You can see there, all that's going to do is give me a deeper root weld, but that's all I need to get that thing slid in. Let's get this one in. There we go. All right. Well, if you guys can't tell, it's dark out. I think I'm going to call it a night. Still a lot to do, but getting there. So you can kind of see the structure of this cage. It's going to work pretty good. Obviously, the rear one's going to be even higher, and we'll maybe hoop this one up to go to it. But I'm going to go eat a very late dinner, and I'll see you guys in the morning. And just like that, it's morning. I got a good night's sleep, had a little breakfast, ready to get back on this thing. Let's get this thing knocked out today. So we have everything lined up here, kind of how I want it. I want to go ahead and just kick the back pieces in because that's going to finish the look of this thing. So I want you guys to kind of see what is envisioned in my brain out here on this thing. First thing we need to do is come out with a 90 and get this bend. So far you see all those little tiny pieces. That's just like my extra. So I feel like I've been doing pretty good as far as saving tubing and preserving what I need. The way I've been kind of going about that is we're gonna have our butt weld right here. And so I'll just come out here, this is 44 inches, and then I'll just swing it around and I want to come out here about this far. So I'm just gonna go 57-ish inches. That's how I know how much tube I want to cut before I put my bend in and everything else. That just kind of saves what I'm doing, gives me a little bit to play with and figure it out. Man, I just put my gloves on. Look at that hole right there. These were brand new when we started this project yesterday. Like, come on, Tillman, you guys can do better than that. These are 2X's. I feel like there's no stitching there, like wasn't to begin with. Bummer. Man, I'm getting pretty good at that thing for just eyeballing it and cutting them up. Now this piece isn't gonna have a single notch in it at all, so that's good. Perfect. Oh yeah, we're getting somewhere. So that's flush with those. I just kind of put it on the level. I can do the same here. We'll get this thing buttoned up real quick. All right, got those tacked in. I noticed last night, because I'm doing all these tacks, I'm starting to get red face, and even, like you can see that, getting a free suntan in the fall. Now I want to make my rear hoop here, and to do that, I'm going to do the exact same thing I did before. I'm going to notch it, and then I'm going to put it in the bender. I'm just going to bend a steeper angle so that it comes up higher in the back. That's pretty much it. Now, if you guys remember my first bend on the very front, I marked it right here. The bend over the middle, over my B-pillar, I marked it right here. So I went 1, 2, 3 notches. So I just went 1, 2, 3 notches in line with these. That's gonna be my back bend. So that way I have that raising roof all the way through. Just so you have an idea here, you can see that that is just a little bit taller. Instead of doing a straight bar up to the higher point, I'm gonna do a little bend to the higher point because this one's a little flat up here. It kind of tapers up and then it went flat in the back, theoretically. Now a lot of you are probably wondering, how am I gonna keep this thing from flopping around? And what I'm gonna do is a little bit different. Because this is aluminum, I can't weld this to the steel. I had a lot of you get upset that I called this metal and this aluminum, but yes, it's all metal. Sometimes my brain doesn't compute to my mouth. This steel doesn't weld to this aluminum. What I'm gonna do is take a piece of flat plate, it can go actually a full 25 inches it looks like, and I'm gonna weld it across here, and then I'm gonna bolt it to that. I'll show you how we're gonna do that. Now what I'm gonna do is weld this plate right to the tubing, and I'm gonna have holes here. So I just need to mark my holy points so things can be holy. Now because everything's gonna be the same on both sides, I went ahead and just tacked the ends of this so that it stays together. That way when I drill my holes here, I can just drill it one time through both plates, save myself a little bit of time anyway. All right, got some holes punched. That went quick. And we have our holy marks. Now, you guys are wondering, what are you doing, Colt? Why are you drilling these holes out? Well, the reason being, I'm going to put in nut certs. So this nice little tool here is gonna make my life very easy. There we go. we have it. So now I can punch these in. This is a kit I got from Harbor Freight, pretty reasonable. I ordered a bunch of these off of Amazon because they're aluminum, so they're a little bit easier to bend up and get in there. Boom. And just like that, I got something to weld to that'll now hold this body together as well. Tube to body, body to tube. It's gonna be good. All right, so I got both sides tacked in. I used 1/4 bolts, probably gonna be the strongest bolts on this entire rig because America. We'll go ahead and get these tightened down and then I'll weld this plate in all the way. We'll be good. Perfect. Boom. That ain't going nowhere, brother. America, America, the toughest bolts in the world. Don't agree with me, then you might see we're the 2-time World War champs. All right. You guys remember we pre-bent and cut these, so there we go. There is our sweet money. Okay, now that should be straight, but we still want to come back here, give it a nice gander, make sure everything flushes away at the same time. Oh yeah. I think we got a Land Rover, my friends. Looks like we just need to make our bar up here for our DOM piece because that way that's the last kind of like external major structure for this thing. So I pre-cut a 4-foot piece. Now we'll go ahead and notch it and I'll put it in the bender. For this angle here, I just want to come up and pretty much just shoot over here level. If I'm a little low where it comes up and then still tapers up, I'm okay with that. But what I don't want is I don't want to overbend this section where it comes up and then it goes down to this bar because then that's gonna not look right. The trick I'm gonna do here is this is about 4 inches of height from this radius. This is about 6 inches of height from this radius. And this is about 2 inches of height from this radius. Give or take an inch or so. Not really overly concerned with it, but I have that mark. I know my marks for all 3 of those bends. So if I go just a couple clicks less than that front one, that should be pretty good for this back one. That should be pretty darn close to where we want it. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, that's gonna be pretty much right on the money. That's the other nice thing I really like about these affordable benders is because they have all the notches already on there. So I don't have to get a degree finder or anything ridiculous. Like it already has notches on there. It's easy for me to mark it if I need to remake that bend, and it's affordable. Now just because this has a bend in it doesn't mean the process isn't still the same. Because my tubes are going the same direction, I still just need to rotate this to where it is in line with the notcher. Which once again still falls into using your micrometer. Ta-da! Alright, check that out. Just the perfect amount of hump right there. Just dink. Fits that just right where it looks very much like a Land Rover. I think we got a win. Think we got a win. Make sure everything's kind of straight there. Tacky. So now we have all the important structure pieces done with DOM. Now I know DOM, like I said, isn't cheap, but we did do it with an affordable bender. I think it did a great job. This thing bends tubing amazingly. Now, there is a couple things we still need to do. We need to take in all of our H-roo. Come in here, I'm gonna do pieces here and little gussets and everything else. I'm gonna add another bend out here and match that one as well so that we actually have a functioning looking roll cage. Not just functioning looking, functioning roll cage. So I think there's a few very important things you need to know if you're building a cage. Number one, you want to try to keep the least amount of bends in it as possible. Like I said, normally I wouldn't do this. It's still going to be structurally strong, but I would have went up a little higher, went straight across, had all my tubes straight because that keeps things stronger. Now obviously you still got to put some bends in, and that's where you want to support it. Secondly, you want a good bender to do that. The affordable bender is probably the most affordable, best bender out there, my opinion. There's great benders out there that can bend like hoops and things. You can still bend a hoop with these. I've seen people do it. But you very rarely ever bend over 90 degrees. If you're bending over 90 degrees outside of a shock hoop, you are probably not bending something correctly because it's not going to hold any structure of any kind. Or you're trying to build a jungle gym. One of the things I also like about this bender is it doesn't crush the tubing. There are cheaper benders out there. Now don't get the two things mixed up. This is number 3. You don't want to get the word tubing mixed up with the word pipe. Pipe is measured from interior diameter. Tubing is measured from exterior diameter. So if you were to get a pipe bender and get 1 3/4 and put 1 3/4 tubing in, it's going to crush it flat. It's not going to be designed to bend it. Number 4 is prep work. Coming in here before you weld your tubes on is going to make your tubes weld a lot nicer. Number 5 is notches, making sure that you got a good notcher to notch the tubing, because the tighter the notch is, the better the weld's going to look. It doesn't have big gaps that you have to fill. If you mess up, make another one. Or do what I showed you here and sleeve it. You can always cut it down, cut a new notch, cut a notch to fit, and then cut it and sleeve it and make that sleeve. You just want to probably support that sleeve or make sure that it's nothing in a major critical point that's going to be detrimental to you. I would not have put these sleeves out here, and I would not have put them in like my B pillar or something like that if I was wanting it to hold up to massive rocks and rollovers. And obviously with that, like I showed you, to take your flap disc on your grinder, go 90 degrees of it, and then sand it down with your DA sander. Your palm sander is going to make it look really, really nice. Along with using some angle iron to make sure the tubes stay straight, because they can still be out just a little bit. So if you got these on there, that's going to hold them, make them straight. I just welded these to a C-clamp, to a Harbor Freight C-clamp. It makes it quicker for me to do stuff. Lastly is to think about support structure. You want to make sure that you have support going at angles that we still need to add to this thing, that also have a good base that's strong and is going to actually protect you. I've seen a lot of rigs where they just bolt it to the floorboard and then the whole body rips off of the frame. That cage won't work. One of the other things I've been needing to do is go through the mail rooms. A lot of you guys have seen the license plates I have on the wall, know that I collect them. What I've been looking for is foreign license plates and to finish up all the provinces, especially in Canada. What I do have here is a few things. This is from somebody named DRF. They didn't leave their name, but they gave me a Washington plate, which is pretty cool. It's got a little buck on it. Pretty nice one, actually.
It's pretty.
Don't know where I'm gonna put that yet, because I kind of like the Mount Rainier plate, but I might find a place for this for sure. Secondly, what will be coming up very soon is the Unreal Adventure video. So I was not part of Unreal Adventure this year as a contender or as part of doing it, but they did actually have me lead them through some trails. So that'll be a video coming up. And a couple of guys broke down. So I told them if anybody breaks down, I'll have the shop ready to help them out. One of them was Jessica and James Jenkin. They actually had a 4-door full-size pickup truck that took all of my entire shop, but they broke a ring and pinion. So we went ahead and replaced their ring and pinion on the front of their truck so they could finish out in UA. And they sent me, they saw the plates and they're like, okay, we actually have family that's in foreign countries. They sent me one from Newfoundland and Labrador, Belize, how cool is that? And Prince Edward Island. Prince Edward Island, I might actually have to try to mount that on this old Tea Party truck. These are some Illinois plates from Stephen Yeaton. He sent them to me. I guess that was his old business, was Wing It. So he did model airplanes. Thanks, Stephen. These are from Steve in California. Check that out. 4x baby and Yoda V8. So I'll probably try to find some spot for these as well. I'm gonna run out of wall space, all these plates I'm getting. I need to start getting more of these foreign plates for sure. John Kenny knew what's up. British Columbia. I do not have, oh look at that one. That one's super cool. Best place on earth. That's calling everybody out. I'll definitely put that up there because I do not have a British Columbia plate. This old red coat's starting to come together. I hope that gave you some good ideas for roll cages, some of the ins and outs, some of the do's and don'ts that I would do. Like I said, all my exterior tubes that are gonna touch rocks, I want them to personally be DOM. But it's up to you, I guess, it's your life. Just remember if you got friends with you. Otherwise, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.